It is not new that humans need to adapt to survive, especially when it comes to living near or even on water. An impressive example is the Sama Bajau, also known as the Sea Gypsies. We have even shown their amazing lives here on our channel. They live in floating houses or small villages built on stilts in the middle of the ocean or in coastal regions of Southeast Asia. They have developed the ability to see underwater and can hold their breath for what seems like an impossible amount of time. If you haven't seen it yet, look for the video, Sama Bajau, the unique gypsies who live on the sea without land to survive. But they are not the only ones. Around the world, many people are learning to live on the water. Amsterdam, for example, understood this a long time ago. The city has more than 2,000 floating houses scattered across its canals, many adapted from old boats or built directly on platforms. But perhaps the most famous case of a floating city is Venice, that Italian city full of canals, gondolas, and historic buildings built on wooden stilts driven into the mud. Now, what few people know is that there is a Brazilian Venice. Today, Belo Mundo will take you to the floating community in the heart of the Amazon, a place where houses, schools, restaurants, shops, and even a gas station sway on the water. Number 1. Location and general information. Before we show you this city that floats on the waters of the Amazon, it's worth taking a break and looking at the map, because understanding where it is almost as curious as the way it lives. You may never have heard of the Manaus Free Trade Zone. It is a special economic area in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, created to encourage the establishment of industries with tax and logistical benefits. Many electronic products and appliances sold in Brazil come from this region, which is one of the most important industrial hubs in the north of the country. The Manaus Free Trade Zone is located in the city of Manaus, which is the capital of the state of Amazonas, a city that lies at the heart of the largest rainforest on the planet. But contrary to what many people imagine, it is not just jungle and rivers. Manaus is like any other capital city, with tall buildings, heavy traffic, shopping malls, and a giant industrial hub. It is a truly large city where forest and concrete compete for space every day. And right in the middle of it all is a huge river called the Rio Negro. The Rio Negro is one of the largest tributaries of the Amazon River. Its waters are dark, almost black, due to the decomposition of organic matter from the forest. It winds around the city as if embracing everything, bordering entire neighborhoods and forming small natural channels. And it was precisely in this setting that a community emerged that did not grow on solid ground. It spread out over the water. This floating village occupied the city's natural channels, known as igarapés. They appear with excess rain, cross entire neighborhoods, and function as liquid streets. The main ones were Educandos, Cachoeirinha, and São Raimundo. All flow into the center of Manaus, near the port and commerce. It was there that the floating city was formed, with wooden houses on rafts, neighbors who visit each other by canoe, and schools accessed by boat. The region's equatorial climate plays a direct role in this. The dry season reveals stretches of sand and wide banks, but during floods, the Rio Negro can rise more than 15 meters. But instead of disappearing, this community follows the rhythm of the river. The houses rise with the water. It is an adaptation to the force of nature, a type of city that was born without planning, but remained standing, or rather afloat, out of sheer necessity. And for a long time it was known as the Brazilian Venice. Number 2. Origin and history of the community. The floating city of the Amazon was not born from a project, nor from a beautiful plan drawn on paper. It was born out of necessity. To understand how it all began, we need to go back to the early years of the 20th century when Manaus was experiencing the end of the rubber cycle. For decades, the city was the major center of latex extraction in Brazil. There was so much wealth circulating that Manaus came to be called the Paris of the tropics. But the bonanza was short-lived. When competition from Asia grew, the market collapsed, and with it came the crash. Without jobs, investment, or infrastructure, the city began to see a new type of movement. A silent exodus took over the region. People from the countryside, river dwellers, northeasterners driven by drought, all migrating to Manaus in search of a new beginning, a livelihood, anything that would guarantee a roof over their heads and food on the table. But the city was not prepared. Everything was lacking: housing, sanitation, public services. It was in this scenario that improvisation became the rule. In 1920, a recent arrival from Paraíba named Juan Aprigio did what seemed unthinkable. He tied together wooden logs, built a simple structure, and floated his house on the Igarapé do Educandos. The idea spread. One led to another. First came the scattered shacks, then small improvised villages. Before they knew it, it was a city. Everything was floating. In the beginning, it was precarious. Small wooden houses without electricity or running water, floating on logs and hope. But over time, what was temporary became permanent. Families grew, the community spread, and life began to happen right there, on the water. For many years, this population lived on the margins of the city, both literally and symbolically. They had no fixed address, no formal registration, but they had their own organization. People built their houses with what they had, created support networks, and learned to deal with the river's ups and downs. It was a very different logic from that of a traditional city. The floating city never had a zip code, but it had a routine, a neighborhood, commerce, and culture. It was a world apart, which grew at the pace of the river and resisted even without structure. And despite all the improvisation, it ended up becoming a symbol of a way of life that only exists in the Amazon. Number 3. What exists? Those who arrive there for the first time are often confused. Everything is different from what one expects of a city. There are no streets, no sidewalks, no street corners. And yet, everything works. Instead of car horns, the sound you hear is the engine of the famous rabeta, which is nothing more than a motorized canoe or small motorboat cutting through the water. Instead of cars, these small boats cross from one side to the other as if they were improvised taxis. It is along these paths that life happens. There are schools with classrooms, teachers, children in uniforms, and snacks during recess. There is a Catholic church with Sunday Mass and a bell that rings punctually. There is also an evangelical temple where worship continues late into the night with praise and prayer. Commerce never stops. There are small shops selling olive oil, soap, rice, candy in jars, and fresh fish in basins. There is a larger grocery store with a freezer, Qualho cheese, and even internet for those who need it. There is a bar with pool, a restaurant that serves calderada, and a beauty salon that is always full before the holidays. And there is a gas station, yes. Only instead of serving cars, it fuels boats. It is anchored on the riverbank, with a pump, an employee, and even a snack bar attached. The city functions as best it can. Everything there is based on adaptation. The spaces are small, the floor sways, the ceiling creaks with heavy rain. But life goes on. Even with so many limitations, there is a routine, there is a neighborhood, there is a community. Those who live there learn early on that living on the river means adapting all the time. But it also means having a freedom that no big city offers. But obviously not everything there is poetry about water. Because, despite functioning, the floating city also suffers, and a lot. Number 4. What's missing? Living on the river has its charms, but also many challenges, and the lack of basic infrastructure is perhaps the biggest one. For starters, there is no sewage system. What goes down the toilet or sink goes straight into the river. No filter, no treatment. The same river that supplies, transports, and feeds them. It's not a choice, it's the only option. Drinking water is also scarce. Some houses are able to store rainwater, others use simple filters. But most still depend on the river water itself, boiled when available, consumed as is when it isn't. Floating water trucks sometimes show up, but they don't solve everything. Garbage collection? There isn't any. Each resident does what they can. They burn what they can, push what's left into corners, throw away what they can't store. Over time, the garbage becomes part of the landscape, piling up between houses, on the banks, and in the streams. Health services are also lacking. There is no clinic or water ambulance. If someone falls ill, they depend on their neighbors, boat engines, and the tide. People have died on the way because, between the pain and help, there is a river in between. There is a school, but it is not always possible to get there. Some students miss school when the river rises too high, when the boat breaks down, or when it rains incessantly. Some teachers can't cross. Even so, classes try to go on, but with little support. Electricity is also unreliable. Some houses are connected to the grid, others use makeshift wiring, others use oil lamps. When the wires get wet, the risk is real. When the power goes out, the night is longer and more dangerous. Mobility is fragile. There are no vehicles, no firefighters. If a fire breaks out, the residents themselves try to put it out. Buckets, axes, oars. It's every man for himself. And then there's the river cycle. When the river floods, houses sink. When it's dry, boats run aground. The water level changes everything, and those who live there have to adapt quickly or lose everything. This lack of infrastructure is long-standing. The floating city has always been there, next to downtown Manaus. But it spent years invisible, ignored by the government. But it is still there, and despite everything, it is still alive. Because when the state fails to deliver, the community itself makes things happen. Number 5. How the community organizes itself. If public services don't arrive, the response comes from within the community itself. And this is nothing new. The floating city in the Amazon has always lived on the margins of politics and infrastructure. But that has never meant passivity. On the contrary, improvisation has become a collective practice. Adaptation is a way of life, and survival is a shared effort. Most of the improvements that exist there did not come from the government. They came from the unity among neighbors, the help of NGOs, partnerships with churches, residents' associations, and independent projects. These are people who came together because they realized that if they didn't do it for themselves, no one else would. When a shack threatens to sink, neighbors help rebuild it. They bring wood, offer a life jacket, lend a hammer. When the engine breaks down, someone who knows about mechanics volunteers to fix it. During times of extreme flooding or severe drought, residents already know what to do. Houses are reinforced, moorings are checked, and rafts are given more floats. Everyone takes care of their own structure, but there is always someone to help those in need. If there is no garbage collection, the community tries to find a workaround. Some families organize themselves to collect whatever they can and burn what they can. There have been cases of people building a collective space just to store recyclable garbage and sell it later. The profit is small, but it helps. In the field of health, some NGOs and volunteer groups make sporadic visits to provide medical care, distribute medicine, and offer guidance. It doesn't solve everything, but it helps. In some situations, older residents even know how to administer first aid or give simple injections if help takes too long to arrive. The school, despite so many obstacles, remains strong thanks to joint efforts. Boats serve as school transportation. Some teachers come from far away because they believe in the importance of what they do. And some students row every day because they know that studying is their only chance to change their lives. There are also community leaders who organize meetings, mediate requests with the city government, and try to ensure a minimum level of assistance. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they don't. But they keep trying. And this sense of community, more than anything else, is what keeps that city alive, even when everything around it seems to want it to sink. Number 6. Economy. In a place where there are no streets, no corner stores, no shopping malls, it's natural to wonder, how do people get by? Where does the money come from? What drives the economy of a floating city? The answer begins with the river. The Rio Negro is not just a backdrop, it is a market, a road, a livelihood. The local economy is based on artisanal fishing. Peacock bass, tambaki, pirarucu, and surubim are among the most sought-after fish. Some fish just to feed their families. Others sell what they catch at markets, on floating platforms, or directly to middlemen who take the product to Manaus. In addition to fishing, many people live off what the forest has to offer: acai, Brazil nuts, pupunha, bananas, cupuaçu. These regional products are a source of income, albeit modest. Some people make manioc flour, tapioca gum, homemade sweets, and handmade soap. Everything is done by hand, using recipes passed down from generation to generation. The products are sold door to door, from canoe to canoe, or on the floating platforms themselves. Women play a central role in this system. They are the ones who produce, sell, take care of the home, and drive an important part of the local economy. Many run small businesses and turn a little into a lot. There are also services, people who repair outboard motors, transport goods by speedboat, work as carpenters, joiners, or boatmen. Some offer transportation, maintain ferries, build canoes, sell ice or hammocks. Those who live closer to the center of Manaus are sometimes able to find permanent or temporary work there. Cooks, construction workers, security guards, and housekeepers. They leave in the morning by boat and return at the end of the day, dividing their routine between two very different worlds. And then there is tourism, which in recent years has begun to emerge as an opportunity. It is not structured at all, but visitors arrive curious, wanting to see the floating city, have lunch in a restaurant on the water, and buy local handicrafts, and the residents have learned to welcome them, to show them around, to enjoy it. The economy there has no companies or tax receipts, but it has effort, creativity, and a unique way of making things happen, even if slowly, even if against the tide. And since we've mentioned tourism, there are plenty of reasons to visit the floating city of the Amazon, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Number 7. Tourism. If the floating houses are impressive, the local fauna completes the magical setting. Obviously, as you might imagine, the only way to get there is by water. Access is from the center of Manaus, via one of the branches of the Rio Negro. You can go by small boat, speedboat, with a local guide, or on your own. There's no mystery, but there are also no roads, just river. The journey itself is an attraction. Along the way, it is common to come across pink dolphins, see birds flying overhead, and hear the sounds of the forest. Depending on the time of year, the water takes over the forest and forms igapos, flooded areas where the boat passes between the trees, as if on a liquid trail. During the dry season, the scenery changes completely. Mud trails, temporary beaches, and sandbanks appear. It is as if the place has two versions, one underwater and one on dry land. Wildlife watching is also an attraction. There is a chance to see sloths, monkeys, alligators, giant otters, and turtles. It all depends on the weather, the season, luck, and silence. Because in the Amazon, the less noise, the more life appears. There are no tour packages with bilingual guides and scheduled times, but there are locals who know every bend in the river and proudly show off where they live. They take you to see the school, the shops, the restaurant, and the floating house where they live. Some offer a regional lunch, a short tour, and good conversation. It's alternative and simple tourism, a different experience in a place where everything moves to the rhythm of the river. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this trip through the floating city of the Amazon, this unique part of Brazil where everything sways, but everything stands firm. Now tell me in the comments, had you ever heard of the famous Brazilian Venice? Would you dare to live in a place where the ground is water and boats are the only way to get around? What caught your attention the most in this story? Leave your answer below. And if you enjoyed this content, take the opportunity to like it, subscribe to the Bello Mundo channel, and activate the bell. That way you won't miss any of our upcoming trips, because there are still many different, curious, and surprising places for us to discover together. See you at the next destination.